What is Halo?
Halo is bad.
Halo is horrible.
Halo was a colossal failure.
Exhausting.
Incompetent.
Not very original.
Never had a chance.
Absolutely unacceptable.
What about Halo 3?
Worse.
So here it is, the end of what fans tell me is gaming's greatest science fiction story. A superweapon has been primed to fire, all life in the galaxy is in the crosshairs, and a religious zealot is reaching for the trigger. Humanity's greatest foe has invaded Earth itself, and we are but one super soldier against a tide we've been told is inexorable. Can we hope to figure out their next move and stop them in time? Can we push them off this last, desperate bastion of hope for our species? Perhaps the civil war boiling within the alien empire's belly will give us a much-needed edge in the fight to come. You know, it's a fine setup. Given the events of the last game, rushed though they may have been, it seems like a very easy place to pick up from and close things out. One would expect that after everything so far, the mid-project total rebuilds, the two close deadlines, they'd really want to get things right for this unexpected third installment. After all, they had so many ideas they didn't have space for, so now's the perfect opportunity to polish them up and give everything the time and respect it deserves. Would you believe me if I said it all goes a bit wrong? Bungie's rotten foundations are on full display, and the finale of this trilogy turns out creatively bankrupt, very obviously having no idea what it wants to accomplish. It's best summed up as a death of ambition, a phoning in of bewildering proportions. The first act is blatant padding, the important parts are sprinted past, and the ending is over in the blink of an eye despite stumbling around for an hour afterward pretending it has anything left to say. Setups go nowhere, key characters are discarded at random, retcons are thrown around like confetti, the setting feels smaller than ever, and any hopes for meaningful answers are best left at the door. The whole thing is especially insulting to anyone who hoped the second game would go somewhere, or who thought the first had potential that could have been nursed into something interesting. But that's not all that surprising, because throughout the entire process so far, the theme's been wasted potential and mismanaged resources. Creatives that lean so heavily on their inspirations they're outright asking to be carried, systems designers that aren't interested in exploring the options those systems give them, and higher-ups that don't understand deadlines or scope. Both previous games have gleefully shown off massive, grand ideas before needing to drag them back into the shadows and hack them apart. The result has, so far, been mediocre and well behind the curve. The trend does continue. This will be an elbows-deep autopsy, and it's not going to be pretty. I'm going to say some relatively unkind things about a game lots of people liked when they were children, or at least before they were old enough to vote. If you want to see what that looks like, by all means, settle in, and if you feel compelled to leave a comment, let's remain polite about things during the whole process. This is just a video game, after all. I'll be honest, all I really want to talk about is the story, so let's just lump all the mechanical discussion into one quick segment. Halo 3 offers almost nothing new over the previous entries, and in fact excises several things with little to replace them. 4 new weapons have been introduced, but don't get excited because 3 are just side grades to something that already existed and not a mechanically unique offering, while the assault rifle is back with half its magazine and a horrible sound effect. The Spartan laser, a much needed but all too rare superweapon, is welcome, but not much better at its job than weapons that already existed. The Platinum Pistol's new vehicle-disabling EMP effect is nice, but a little too much on top of something that was already such a strong choice. Deployables are tossed into the campaign with no fanfare or obvious intent behind them, a very make-your-own-fun sort of tool. I'm ultimately glad they exist, since it does represent some real player choice and strategy, but they're typically not impactful enough to remember to use. The Hornet is the human faction's counterpart to the Banshee, while the Prowler is a carbon copy of the Spectre and the Chopper is just a bigger ghost. They're flavored as brute vehicles, but don't do much to convince you. Finally, the Phantom's been made a little more manageable, with 2 of its belly guns being turned into door gunner positions, and the entire thing has been made destructible. And as far as enemies go, we have nothing. In fact, negative numbers of enemies have been introduced because the elites are our friends now. The Grunts and Hunters were supposed to be 2, but Bungie walked that one back when they realized they needed to make a third game and had written themselves out of almost their entire enemy roster. This was the correct choice for gameplay purposes. We all saw how tedious fighting nothing but brutes got, but it should have been the perfect time to introduce more new enemies to fill the gaps and expand their options. Oh well. In the elites' place are, instead, brutes with energy shields who just end up feeling like elites again. Their eagerness for melee combat has been toned down, and they get all the old behaviors without anything to make them distinct. They do have a couple versions with the usual higher amounts of health and shield, but there's still no difference between the way these different ranks act. At least the turret-toting chieftains make for noticeable mini-bosses, but it's so little in the face of what else is gone. Hunters and drones show up maybe twice each, grunts and jackals haven't been given any new weapons to use, and while sentinels are still in the game for mere moments, the larger enforcers are nowhere to be seen, nor are there any new versions. The only real addition is a new flood creature that can transform between a big melee bruiser and a ranged wall-crawling sniper. The design is fine, if obnoxious, but doesn't add anything the faction didn't already have access to. As the singular new addition to the entire roster, it's underwhelming at best. Proper bosses are missing entirely unless you count the Scarab. It's been freed from its role as a linear set piece and can stomp around suitably large areas, looking scary but not doing much. Just like last game, they give you no chance to be intimidated by these things and always make sure there's a vehicle nearby to totally negate the encounter. Pop their leg armor, hop in the back when they squat down, deal with the defending party, and blow up the generator. Visually impressive, but not that much to engage with. You could say the same thing about the entire series. For how the first game boldly proclaimed that it was combat evolved, it's wild how little the mechanics have actually grown since 2001. Bungie was already years behind the curve in that first showing, and they've taken the most hesitant baby steps with each new entry. Halo 2 showed a clear intent to improve with the expansion to the arsenal and its 3 new enemies, but it only felt as good as it did because it kind of, almost, but not quite achieved parity with games from the mid-90s. Enemies in Halo 3 still have the most basic of behaviors with the slightest differences between them, and they're still not put into particularly interesting combat encounters to make up for these shortcomings. Even compared to last game, that aspect is a collection of massive steps backwards. You won't see nearly as many sniper jackals or fuel rod grunts, the surprise of a sword-wielding elite is of course gone entirely, and drones are still rare and always by themselves. We're pretty firmly back to nothing more daring than a group of 3 grunts for every brute and a couple jackals to give you more of an excuse to throw grenades. Frustratingly, grunts do actually get a bit of a side grade with the introduction of the kamikaze behavior. When they get low on health, they have a chance to pull out 2 primed plasma grenades and just beeline for you. It's a very simple addition, but effective at forcing you to switch targets on the fly. And that's why I say it's frustrating. The mechanical changes that have been introduced across the series are good to see, but they're not reliably present and are all things that were expected yet missing. We're talking basic fundamentals of combat design that were figured out before these kinds of games were 3D. Enemies that have different abilities, weapons with a utility designed to counter a certain thing, behaviors that demand you make a quick choice. People look at this series like it's a trailblazing force of nature that did all this new stuff and got it all right on the first try. I see it as constantly failing to catch up. Playing Halo 3, as in interacting with the video game, feels like the most straightforward collection of calls and responses, a rote memorization exercise masquerading as a first-person shooter. Nothing about it is constructed to test your skill or knowledge of the game's systems. Maps are still just simplistic guided tours through a pleasant-looking but shallow world, and the feedback of using its weapons is anemic and uninspired. In a time period when spectacle shooters were on the rise, games that could expertly micromanage your adrenaline levels to deliver something impossibly thin but highly effective, Halo 3 sets itself apart by making sure nothing ever stands out. Well, that's not entirely fair. The story stands out for all the wrong reasons.
They let me pick. Did I ever tell you that? Choose whichever Spartan I wanted. You know me. I did my research, watched as you became the soldier we needed you to be. Like the others, you were strong and swift and brave. A natural leader. But you had something they didn't. Something no one saw but me. Can you guess? Luck.
Lady, what the hell are you talking about? Where'd luck come from? Are we doing more Ringworld? Did Bungie want to try to fit Tila Brown in here? And all this other stuff. You're a warship's tactical AI. What possible relevance do you have to this character at all beyond working with him? I guess she could have put in a recommendation to Captain Keyes that he serve on the Pillar of Autumn, but what was all that other stuff about watching him train? Has Bungie forgotten to tell us something? Or 2 somethings? Because I sure remember the last game ending with us about to storm the Eiffel Tower and halt the hostilities. End the engagement. Permanently pause the pugilism, put a kibosh on all the killing. I can't help but notice we aren't doing that. In fact, we're falling, like a whole sequence of interesting and potentially fun events happened off-screen, and now we're seeing the aftermath of a narrative climax we didn't get to participate in. Real strong start. Things get less coherent as the Arbiter uncloaks and the Master Chief tries to shoot him, a reaction that in no way lines up with how he was the even-headed one in their singular previous interaction.
Relax. I'd rather not piss this thing off.
Demon.
And without any real fanfare or setup, we're off. Our introduction to this game is every D-list action movie's favorite time waster: they wander through the woods. We're not even given an exciting justification or an explosive kickoff. Johnson followed our armor's tracking device to where we fell, and now we have to follow him to some dropships that'll bring us back to base. It's the simplest possible point A to point B field trip with only a handful of small fights to act as toothless interruptions. From a structural standpoint, this is a terrible opening level. It has no narrative connection to events that were set up previously, and we don't learn anything about the current situation. A random series of events is just happening at us. You could do any of this in whatever order, and it would all lead to the same place. And our current place is some nebulous point in the future. As is typical for Bungie, we've been shunted forward to where their latest idea can start, and all the pieces have been rearranged off-screen to make it happen. The last game ending with us on the Eiffel Tower as it showed up background Earth, and this game starting with us falling off it suggests maybe an hour has passed, but we don't get that information. We can't be given it, because that would demand that they also tell us how Johnson and the Arbiter were able to leave the Delta Halo they were on the last time we saw them, and if they were still there, Johnson couldn't be captured here. Don't worry though, the very next thing we do is rescue Johnson. It's one combat encounter. This event doesn't kick off a plot thread, introduce a new minor antagonist, or lead into something bigger. It's just a thing that happens, and then we move on. Before we do, we have to sit around killing enemies until Bungie lets us keep playing the game, at which point a pelican shows up to take us back to base. So, despite some minor speed bumps, we have perfectly accomplished our original goal. Nothing that happened has affected our plans or the story in any way. Oh right, the Arbiter's been here the whole time. Let's take a quick break to talk about the Arbiter. Halo 3, like the games before it, supports extra players in the campaign. But where the two previous entries were content to simply spawn superficial Spartans or have extra elites emerge whose presence was neither explained nor expected to be, this game decided to make the Arbiter the coveted Player 2. This means that his role in the story cannot be properly accounted for, and so it has been removed entirely. If you're playing single player, the Arbiter will very occasionally say a brief line of dialogue vaguely related to something that just happened. The people he's speaking to, however, will not pay attention.
The Grunt's newfound courage is the fear. When we are victorious, all who serve the prophets will be punished. We've won this fight.
This is because if you're playing co-op, the Arbiter never opens his mouth outside of cutscenes. So it doesn't matter if you're alone or not, the Arbiter just isn't part of the story anymore. All that stuff about him coming to terms with the lies he'd lived under, his place in the military structure of a crumbling regime, his slow acceptance that his enemy might have more of a point than his leaders? Gone. Small part of me wonders if this is because Tassadar died at the end of StarCraft and Bungie didn't have any more of his story to find and replace. What really helps make this such an egregious character assassination is that when you're playing solo, the Arbiter isn't always with you. He's very obviously off having his own adventures that we never get to know about. But hey, a vocal group didn't like switching away from the green guy, so the other way more interesting character has to be shoved to the background so the Master Chief can keep not doing anything interesting. Speaking of, our useless hike has brought us to the Rat's Nest, an old military compound where the remnants of a broken force have regrouped. We have a quick chat with Miranda Keyes and Lord Hood, get the tiniest scrap of information that the Covenant are digging for something, and then the Prophet of Truth hijacks the base's communications to monologue at us for a bit. Fire and brimstone kill the humans. It's nothing new, interesting, or plot-related. The Master Chief does actually make a comment about it, so maybe this break from having Cortana around to say his lines is finally going to force him to become more of a character and actually participate in the story. Don't count on it, though.
Where should they go?
To war.
And to be fair, I wouldn't want to with dialogue like that, either. What she actually wants us to do is head to the motor pool to get ready to go fight some anti-air batteries in a nearby town. Cool, some motivation. And of course it should be mentioned that Keyes here, just like the other two, was last seen on the Delta Halo. But if she was still there, she couldn't deliver this terrible one-liner, and that's so clearly worth throwing away any sense of consistency. Related to that, the things she mentions suggest that she's been here a while, so once again the question is how much time has passed between games. And the answer is still a random indeterminate amount that changes based on what scene we're in. And in this scene, the Covenant start attacking the base. Like Earth last time, they've just randomly found it because that makes the narrative happen. We go around and have some combat encounters, usually by being locked in a box and fighting waves of enemies until Bungie says we're allowed to keep playing, before being sent on to the next one. The level only takes about 15 minutes, but still manages to feel aggressively padded as you're just bouncing between a couple major areas over and over again. It's supposed to show the Covenant slowly taking the place over, but ends up just feeling like Bungie's usual MO of repeated geometry and doing levels backwards. Our second time in the Control Center shows that Keyes has prepared a going away present for the invading force, a bomb set to blow up once we evacuate. Unfortunately, the Covenant managed to break in and disable it, so we must fight our way back for a third visit in order to rearm it. Afterwards, we head to the motor pool to get ready to fight some anti-air batteries in a nearby town, just like we originally planned. Which means that, despite some minor speed bumps, we have perfectly accomplished our original goal. Nothing that happened has affected our plans or the story in any way. Savo Highway is a straight shot towards the town of Voy where the Covenant have set up those guns. They're what's apparently holding back the entire might of Earth's air and spaceborne fleets, so it must be a hell of a base they've constructed. Something to wonder about during the drive. And that's about it. This is a short level with a bunch of combat encounters you can drive past, a couple you're meant to clear out before moving on, and some quick on-foot segments. Given that we wanted to get to Voy and then do so, it seems that, despite some minor speed bumps, we have perfectly accomplished our original goal. Nothing that happened has affected our plans or the story in any way. It's been about an hour of game time, and we've consistently just puttered around not really doing anything. And that's a real drag to see, because as you may remember, Halo 2 almost got there. It was rough in the back half, sure, but this was the chance to even things out, do something with all the dangling threads, patch up the holes. But a narrative is not being built here. These are all just random distractions that don't feel connected to the previous game. They've added nothing to any of the characters and no detail to the world. Things just happen, and then we move on. In the first video, I talked about how a simple story can still be incredibly entertaining if it's told well, and how Bungie consistently fails to do that. Narratives like this live or die on how the characters react to and improvise around the obstacles put in their path. If every solution to a problem works the first time, or if external interference is effortlessly sidestepped, what's the point of the conflict? Why are you telling this story? Nothing that's happened so far has caused plans to change. No alternate strategies needed to be formulated, no additional resources needed to be secured. The first pair of Pelicans being shot down and Johnson being captured didn't allow the enemy to get critical information out of him or demand that we abandon a plan in motion so we could rescue him. The Covenant attacking the military base didn't disrupt anything important or force us to do something without proper resources, and the enemy forces on the road to Void didn't necessitate a detour or put us up against any sort of time pressure. These have all just been random things that happen, and then we move on. The whole game up to this point could have just been an opening cutscene for how little has happened, and that's a problem when this is a full third of what's on offer. The only plan we know of that changed was us not killing Truth on the Eiffel Tower, and we have no idea why we couldn't or what happened instead. This is such a failure by every measure. Bungie are telling the wrong parts of this story. So is the storm any better? Well, it's different. Here we are at the anti-air battery we were told to disable. It's less impressive than previously suggested. One anti-air wraith, then two, then our old pal the Scarab shows up. The fights here are fine, I suppose. Big vehicle Thunderdomes are fun, but each one's over pretty quick. Like, they're just wraiths. The Scarab is better, but its introduction is more noteworthy than the fight. But hey, still, not a bad segment. I mean, way too short to justify being an entire level. It probably should have just been part of the last one, but it was well-paced. You've got the introduction to the threat with one wraith, escalating it with two, then the Scarab to cap things off as a big wow factor experience. Wait, what do you mean it's not over? That was the big climax of the level, right? Yeah, so it turns out there's another minor part here, and it's to do a couple small on-foot segments to blow up exactly one cannon. Okay, you know what I've said about Bungie being bad storytellers? This right here is more of that. They put the level together wrong. You don't do the big boss fight before a minor side objective, do the wraiths, do the cannon, then oh no, a giant scarab! And also, that's it? 3 wraiths and 1 big gun were holding back the entire fleet of bombers and half a dozen battlecruisers. You can jog away from the plasma bolts these wraiths fire. A ship would never get touched by them. The big gun itself wasn't even protected by anything but infantry. You're telling me none of those big spaceships could slam around into it? Nobody was willing to do a run on the ships hovering over this artifact because of exactly 4 guns? Humanity's last hope for survival, the fear that all life in the galaxy is about to be extinguished, and we're holding back because 1 or 2 ships might get shot down on the way? Oh, also, yes, there's a big artifact that's been unearthed, larger than the city they blew up last time. Look, I can suspend my disbelief. I'm not even going to get into how Africa is by far the most geologically exploited landmass in the entire world, and how there's no way that this thing could have gone unnoticed for this long when someone was carving out another cobalt mine or whatever, or how the apparent disappearance of whatever body of water this was should be causing significantly more problems than a light rain, because... Oh wow, it turns out the giant portal device to a super secure location where the Forerunners could wait out the firing of the weapons that kill galaxies was built directly into our home planet. I wonder what that could possibly mean. It's a total mystery. Remember in the first video when I said that finding Forerunner stuff must be incredibly common to garner as much apathy as it gets? How people inside a setting talk about aspects of that setting is a storytelling tool. And if they don't talk about it despite it being directly in their face, the audience is being told that it's not worth mentioning. There is no response to this thing's existence. I get there's a whole situation going on right now, but Keyes told us they were digging 2 levels ago, just have her mention it there. The setting remains so transparently slapdash, things just thought up on a whim and tossed in to try to impress for exactly 1 moment, with no thought put into how it should fit. And as all the various ships travel into the portal, you really have to ask, where have I seen this before? An attack on a military base ending with doing something with a giant bomb, a race down a highway to get into a city, a fight with a giant walking war machine, a sudden exit into a giant portal, us following in order to kill a prophet. This is just Halo 2 again. All the filler has been in service of repeating every major plot beat from Halo 2. Bungie had the golden opportunity to take all their ideas that needed to get cut for the last game and expand on them, to create a finale that brought everything together. Instead, they flat out admit that there were no ideas left over. This is not part 2 of a sprawling narrative, this is the last plot point they couldn't squeeze in, surrounded by just enough to convince an inattentive player that they're experiencing something whole. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Instead of rushing for the portal like a well-paced story would, we have to take another random detour to do this level backwards, just like old times, because a flood-infested cruiser has warped in and crashed nearby. Oh, this is bad. Right? The first game kicked off this subplot by putting heavy emphasis on how incredibly dire a problem it is when the Flood get loose, and they're right on top of us. Surely this is the worst possible news we could get. Well, everyone's remarkably calm about it, and none of them seem to be worried that they've appeared. Not even a how the hell did they find us, just ho-hum, another flood infestation, a regular old evening here in Voy. Meanwhile, some friendly elites show up to help out. Wait, is this supposed to be how Keyes, Johnson, and the Arbiter got back to Earth? It makes sense, I guess, but then where have any of these other guys been for the last 4 levels? Don't ask that, just look at how cool it is when the drop pods come down, aren't you entertained? They tell us that Cortana is apparently on board the crashed ship, but a short walk over there reveals it's just a recording. Hey, so last game, Cortana said she'd blow up High Charity if it looked like the rings were going to be activated, and she already didn't do that.
I'll detonate in Emberclad's reactor just like we did the Autumns. The blast will destroy this city and the ring.
The great journey has begun.
But if the floating city has been fully infested, it really seems like there's no better time than now. Or, rather, about 20 minutes ago, before a plague ship landed on our shores and brought the promise of a slow, agonizing death along with it. Don't worry though, the elites cleaned it all up while we weren't looking. Wait, what? Yeah, apparently they've got it under control. They blew up half Africa off screen, so we're free to leave to pursue truth. A single spore is enough to kill a planet, but they got them all, so it's no big deal. What was that about Africa? Don't worry about it, it's just a thing that happened. Now let's move on. The stakes were non-existent, then they were dire, and now they've been dropped. The Flood remains such a baffling non-entity in this series, constantly given absurd amounts of focus that never actually leads to anything. Once again, the introduction of this obstacle has not changed our existing plans in any way. We were going to follow truth into the portal, and we're still going to do that just after yet another 10-minute detour. The presence of the Flood on Earth has been solved, and there are no relevant consequences. It was just a thing that happened. Let's move on. So, in we go, and out we come near the mysterious Ark. It starts off pretty bad, honestly. We walk forward, come through this arch, and see this mountain in the skybox. Its peak draws the eye upward, where the big arm of the structure above it pulls it further until we're looking at what's clearly our galaxy, an instantly recognizable visual marker for how far the portal has flung us. I want to make this clear. This is very intentional framing. An environmental artist did this on purpose. One of the Marines even comments on it, but...
Check it out, in the sky. Is that...
Hey, focus. We got a job to do.
Incredible. It's no longer just subtext or the way things are constructed. Voiced characters are now outright telling you to ignore your surroundings. And then it happens. After a minor sniper sequence, you go into a little hallway and see a door off to the side. Through it is the first of a series of text logs you can find. Oh boy. The information contained in these text logs is not relevant to the current story that's already struggling to be told. It doesn't add new insights into what's going on or help you understand various themes. It's not a world-building aid because you're just getting jumbles of proper nouns thrown at you with nowhere to find context for them. And all of it together? It just makes a story of two random characters arguing about whether or not they'll activate the rings. Gee, I wonder if they did.
Why would you hesitate to do what you've already done? This installation has a successful utilization record of 1.2 trillion simulated and 1 actual.
This is the second half of the third of 3 games in a story that was never supposed to get this far. There's nowhere left to go, no space for any of this to mean anything. Background fluff is fine, but it's too late now. Where was this in the first or second game? If this information was always supposed to be relevant but wasn't present in either previous entry, that's a disastrous failure of storytelling. If it's only just now been thought up for this game, that's an admission that it cannot matter. So why should I care about this? Why should I want to be invested in the secret background lore of a game series that couldn't ever bother to figure itself out and only has 90 minutes left to make an impact? Well, I don't. That's the thing. I've already spent longer talking about this text log than Bungie gives you to read it, so I'll do what they did and unceremoniously slam the topic shut. Next up is a big vehicle rampage to one end of an area and back, yet again just blandly going through the motions. Tiny clusters of enemies, another couple anti-air obstacles that are literally shooting at nothing. You can really feel the entropy setting in. Then they give you a tank, and it's just a snooze fest as you blast 1 or 2 ghosts at a time, or maybe a wraith. But then you come to this door, and instead of closing out the level and shunting you forward, the door actually opens, and you continue on. Yes, a working doorway that isn't just a level transition is now a noteworthy element of the Halo series. But wait! There's more. Guilty Spark talks a bit about something, and it's all very hard to judge what's important or not, given that anything said outside of a cutscene has 0 chance of being responded to, and a bunch of what he said earlier was drowned out by combat noises. Oh yeah, he showed up at some point, I don't actually remember when. We get to a gatehouse sort of room and activate a bridge for a waiting party. And look at that down there, we can actually see them drive on through. Look, I know I'm reaching, but it's nice to see an action we take matter outside of the very end of a level. It's a little bit of extra detail to help make the world feel that much more alive. And hey, the level still isn't over. We actually go back outside and run to another scarab after a vehicle gauntlet. It's definitely a huge step up from what it took to get here. The presentation, the level design, and the encounters all just flow a little bit better, and things finally feel like they're picking up. So much so that I can't help but feel like the game really wanted to start here. So why didn't it? Why not just have the Eiffel Tower activating this portal and flying through it be the opening cutscene and use this as the very first level? They could even have a big bombastic gunfight on the tower to be a short prologue before failing to kill Truth and somehow getting aboard a ship with Keyes, Johnson, and the Arbiter. Why waste all that extra time in-game and development with the first 5 we have now? Speaking of the Arbiter, he hasn't been around for this entire level, but at some point he gets dropped off to join us. Does he have anything to say about his off-screen adventures?
It seems I've crossed a circuit.
Let me have a look.
Okay, let's move on. Inside the structure, it's some more fights, then a cutscene where Guilty Spark finds something about the Ark that intrigues him before learning that a shield has been raised over the center. We need to lower it in order to get to Truth, who's holed up in some sort of control bunker. A notable thing here is just how much the Master Chief says during all of this. He's not just grunting 1 or 2 word affirmations, but speaking complete sentences and asking his own questions. I know I've harped on this for ages, but when you have someone who is explicitly not a silent protagonist clam up whenever the camera's on him, it's a frustrating experience where you're spending the entire time waiting for him to participate. And here, he finally does. And it adds a lot. Suddenly, the guy we're inhabiting is giving us an emotional connection to the events at hand, and I, hater that I am, find myself eager to engage in response. Cortana not being around is the best thing that has ever happened to this character. Although his surprise at learning that we're beyond the edge of our galaxy is questionable given the skybox from earlier. I guess as far as canon's concerned, we never looked up. Continuing, the Arbiter leaves again to go have a different adventure we never see while we go a bit deeper and do some more fights. This whole segment unfortunately does highlight how much work the brutes are having to do to play the roles of the elites and themselves in this game. We've seen jetpack versions a few times and now they're the invisible ones. They've had their mechanical identity smoothed over and now just have to act as replacements with little to define them. Given that the elites haven't been around so far despite supposedly being on our side, it makes the whole Civil War plot feel like a useless lateral move. Equally uninteresting is the final bit here. It could charitably be called a boss encounter, but is really just another room full of brutes with some jackals on the edge. It's not bad on its own, but as the finale of a level this grand, it lacks the sort of impact you'd expect. In any other game, this would be a mid-level shake-up, a little difficulty bump to keep you on your toes, or a fight against a minor antagonist we've sparred with previously. But this is Bungie, so it's the best they've got. The switch gets flipped in the Covenant, a mostly solid level with strong momentum and a nice series of shifting objectives. The opening cutscene isn't anything spectacular, but it sets a good tone. Also, I've always been tickled by how the friendly elite force painted their ships green just like ours. Maybe that's what they've been doing this whole time. A hot drop onto a beach to take out some vehicles, or ride up to a small outpost, or rampage through a base to disable the first of 3 shield generators with a chieftain mini-boss at the top. It all works well, though Bungie's back to some old failings with putting this invisibility power-up directly at the entrance to the tower, all but telling you there's a place to use it soon. We even learn what the Arbiter's been doing when the second generator falls. Unfortunately for Johnson though, he's not a playable character, so his own mission fails and we have to go cover for him. Unfortunately for us, that leads to an awkward segment where we just drive down an empty path for a minute to get back to where we started. It does lead to a short but fun aerial battle to get over to the third tower using the new Hornet. This bit does make me want to point to the god-awful setup of the Storm again though, since there are just as many anti-air wraiths involved here and we destroy them with a single light support fighter, with other enemy air targets engaged. All that cleared out, it's time to take out the third tower, and the Arbiter's even here to help. Does he have anything to say about all this? Cool. He pulls back before the mini-boss segment anyway, though it doesn't matter that much.
Go, Spartan. We have no time to waste.
We hit the button, drop the shield, and watch as the big friendly ship that's with us begins its assault on the control room. Disaster strikes, however, when an infested High Charity warps in. Hey, so last game, Cortana said she'd blow up High Charity if it looked like the rings were going to be activated, and she already didn't do that.
I'll detonate in Emberclad's reactor just like we did the Autumns. The blast will destroy this city and the ring.
The great journey has begun.
But if the floating city has been fully infested, it really seems like there's no better time than now. Or rather, about 20 minutes ago, before Plague Ship landed on the Ark and brought the promise of a slow, agonizing death along with it. Well, it's here now, and it starts spewing spore pods everywhere. Through the ship, through this window, it's all bad news. Sort of. After a brief fight back the way we came, we exit the tower, and there just aren't any more Flood. Now it's back to tank rampaging through Covenant forces. That was just a thing that happened, and now we've moved on. Something I do like here is how a short hallway is all that separates the lush woodland biome from the Arctic tundra next to it, highlighting the artificial nature of the structure and even calling back to Cortana's comment in the first game about how all the snow and ice might have been an intentional decision.
I wonder if the ring's environment systems are malfunctioning, or if the designers wanted the installation to have inclement weather.
Now I will say that if this place is supposed to be a haven for whoever the Forerunners were, to wait out the firing of the Halos, the existence of all this inhospitable ice and stretches of scorching desert doesn't make a lot of sense. This is where potentially billions of alien masterminds were supposed to live. Why would they want huge spans of wasted space? A good writer could do a lot with how the geographical makeup of an artificial world could be used in conjunction with support or defense systems, cold areas for cooling, deserts as a kind of moat, or as a creeping failure of what keeps the world alive. I mean, a good one did. Anyway, we trade the tank for another Hornet, fight 2 more Scarabs in a sequence that only serves to highlight how useless they are, then take a bridge into the control room. We might just be too late though, as the climax of Halo 2 is playing out once again. Truth's in full-on gloat mode, and Johnson tries to trick a brute into killing him so he can't be made to activate the Halos, which of course only a human can do. I think. They still haven't confirmed that, so I'm still guessing. Truth even says it's a secret, so I have to imagine that Bungie thinks they're doing a great job keeping it from everyone. Sure. Miranda Keyes smashes through the window in a badly thought-out rescue attempt and is instantly killed. Net zero impact on the story, excellent work, it was just a thing that happened. That excuse to get rid of a character taken care of, Truth drops some more, very subtle hints as to humanity's past, then forces Johnson to activate the Halos. Luckily, being offline for a few 100 million years has really stacked up the updates, and the startup sequence is more than long enough for us to get there. Along the way, we ally with a horde of Flood who are allowed to show up again now that we're done the big Covenant focus section. It's a decent enough little set piece, a bunch of heavily armed brutes on this bridge, but it's interrupted by these momentum-shattering bits where a hollow truth pops up to keep monologuing. I'm in kind of a hurry. Can you do this over the loudspeaker instead? Is it like this so we have a place to hear the speeches cleanly, like there's important plot-related info in them? No, not really, it's just more of the usual dogmatic waffle that he's been doing since the last game. We make it there, the Arbiter— oh, he's been here the whole time too, sorry, he's just so noticeable and irrelevant. Kills Truth after a one-liner that's better than anything the green guy ever came up with, we stop the updates, shut down the array, and that's it. Story's over. The big bad's been defeated, the threat of galactic annihilation is gone, and we're friends with a sizable portion of the aliens we used to be at war with. Not many places left to go. Oh, I hate the Flood so goddamn much. Halo, as a series, is not a story about 2 warring factions that unwittingly release a third they must all contend with. It is a story about 2 factions that sometimes have to wave awkwardly at a third when there isn't anything else going on. The main thrust of all 3 games has been stop the Covenant from using the Halos, and the Flood are just weird hangers-on that never add anything but runtime. You could very easily rewrite this story without them. In Halo 1, they only showed up after the main goal, stopping the Covenant from reaching the control room, was fully solved. There was no larger story attached to their presence, just a series of randomly shifting objectives that took up time until the credits rolled. In Halo 2, they didn't even factor into the human side of the story, and the Arbiter only dealt with them as incidental roadblocks. Their presence was just kind of accepted and moved on from immediately. Other than teleporting the 2 leads to their respective final levels, somehow, the Flood in general and the Grover Mine specifically had no impact on the plot. And now in Halo 3, it's only once the Covenant fleet leaves Earth that the Flood ship shows up, then it's dropped by the very next cutscene. Once the entire story is wrapped up, they return to honor a badly thought out obligation the introduction of them into the second game created. They do not need to be here. Now if, perhaps, the story of the entire series was instead about us stumbling on not only the Halos, but the knowledge that humanity was once a galaxy-spanning empire brought low by a virulent plague of our own design that necessitated the creation and use of weapons so unimaginably powerful that only a haven beyond the edge of the galaxy could keep a small group safe, their continued existence could have some sort of narrative theme. But that's not what the story's about, so never mind. When the Arbiter says,
"We trade one villain for another,"
he's correct, and that's a criticism. The story is over, but Bungie have just slotted in a new bad guy because they have a requisite number of levels they need to hit. And it's really obvious, because the bump in quality we've been enjoying for these last 2 is about to plummet again. Now that the game is, for all intents and purposes, entirely over, the Grover Mind lets out a literal mwahaha, summons some giant tentacles to keep us away from our escape route, then immediately withdraws them so we can have a fair fight against some regular enemies instead. We go back the way we came, drop down a convenient hole, then something really stupid happens. Something else really stupid. Cortana shows up as a flickery hologram drifting through the hallway. Okay? We're led to a window where we can see the big last-minute secret, that the Ark is also a forge for a new Halo ring. Pretty good turnaround for a place that's hundreds of millions of years old, given that we only blew the first one up about a week ago. I think. Anyway, why is Cortana in this hallway? How is she doing this? I guess. maybe, to be wildly, aggressively charitable to the game here, this could be her projecting a visual effect into the Master Chief's helmet the same way she does the waypoints. The Arbiter apparently doesn't see her, so maybe that tracks, and she is relatively nearby. It doesn't explain all the other stuff. Those of you who have played this game before might have noticed that I've been leaving something out. Ever since the first level, Cortana will occasionally appear on screen, slowing our movement speed to a crawl and blacking out everything else. She'll prattle on for a bit, saying lines that may be complete English sentences, but otherwise make no sense.
This place will become your home.
If you're wondering why I haven't brought this up before, the answer is as simple as it is repetitive. It doesn't matter to the story, and nobody mentions it. It's just a thing that happens. But as we crawl through the even more infested than last time hallways of High Charity, it does feel like something I should bring up, because it did happen a lot, and that's got to mean something. Well, in a story written by a person who knows how to tell one, maybe it would. It's trying to put some weird 11th hour importance on Cortana as a character that just wasn't there before. She's a warships tactical AI, someone it always felt like we just met for about the first time back in Halo 1. She and the Master Chief had a mild rapport, but absolutely nothing that suggested anything beyond a reasonable working relationship. Keyes had to give the order for her to be transferred into his armor, and she commented on the experience like it was the first time it had happened. Then, of course, in Halo 2, she's back in operation as the station's tactical AI. There's absolutely nothing to suggest that these two have any previous reason to know each other, but this game really thinks there is. And it's because Halo 3 wants Cortana to play the part of Sarah Kerrigan. Yes, I'm doing this again. In StarCraft, Sarah Kerrigan was a high-level ghost operative, a psychic Spec Ops badass. She meets Jim Raynor, former soldier and local backwater marshal, early in the story. She and him kinda hit it off, but she's betrayed by her commanding officer and left to die in a Zerg-infested base. Raynor, helpless to stop the fleet from pulling out, has no choice but to watch her be taken by the swarm. However, her story does not end there, for she has not been killed but brought to the Overmind, the ancient entity in command of the Zerg. There, she is tortured and remade into its instrument, but retains enough willpower during the process to call out psychically to Raynor even across the vastness of space. Convinced that she's still alive, he mounts a rescue operation, plunging deep into the heart of Zerg territory before finally reaching her.
Sarah, is that really you? I dreamed you were still alive, that somehow you were calling to me.
Does this, perhaps, sound familiar? Given Bungie's heavy borrowing from the same source for last game, maybe you can excuse me for finding more similarities. Now, Blizzard did not invent this character arc, nor should Bungie be disallowed from using the same. It's perfectly fine if Cortana is set up like this, and there are in fact some differences between them. But where Kerrigan was forever changed and became a new, dangerous force upon the story, Cortana's fine. She stands up, gets transferred back into the little doodad, and that's it, back to business as usual. The whole thing that was set up isn't exactly the right word, so let's call it around for the entire game up until now is just forgotten. The characters don't have anything to say about it, and it does not color their interactions afterward. It's just a thing that happens, and now it's over. I guess let's move on. Wait, I thought she got upgraded to use NFC. Whatever, Bungie hasn't kept the details of the story straight so far, why would they start now? There is actually a reason for the change to have been reverted, and don't worry, it's a stupid one. Actually, before continuing, let's talk about High Charity for a moment. More specifically, all the times Cortana should have blown it up like she said she would.
I'll detonate in Emberclad's reactor just like we did the Autumns. The blast will destroy this city and the ring.
How about right here, when it's directly beside the giant fleet you don't want to reach Earth? Or when Tartarus activates the rings? Or when the Grover Mind is taking the entire place over? Or when a flood-controlled ship warps to Earth? Or when an infested High Charity warps first to Earth, then to the Ark? Or when Truth activates the rings? These are all points where a truly dire threat could have been immediately solved with the destruction of a massive city ship. Cortana is very bad at her job. The level Cortana is also very bad, an absolute nightmare of unclear signposting, dead ends, and obnoxiously large enemy spawns that constantly force you backwards. Maybe the intent is supposed to be that you feel like you're making incremental progress against this overwhelming tide of enemies in what's now their home turf, and there is an interesting way to do that, but here it's just a painful grind. Enemies keep spawning in the same areas over and over again, and it'll chase you far enough that you can't reliably get a checkpoint if you're trying to keep up some forward momentum. So you meander back and forth, going through the motions, clearing out every single massive enemy spawn, listening to Cortana and the Grovermind mumble endlessly, and it's so tedious. Then we find her, she's perfectly fine as previously mentioned, and we get the big reveal. She's had the index from the first Halo this entire time, and expects to be able to use it to fire this newly built replacement. So, Cortana's plan was to lure the entirety of the Flood into one place where a massive explosion could wipe them all out. If only there had been no fewer than 6 other times where that was an option. Don't worry, I hear what you're about to say. Luring them all to the Ark puts them in one place. Well, they already were in one place, and High Charity, or even the Delta Halo, is significantly smaller than the entirety of the Ark, which would have only increased the odds of getting all of them. There's no way to know that High Charity exploding would have been enough. Except that the stated plan was to use the combined power of Key's ship and the city ship to destroy the entire Halo, which was considered enough to wipe out the Flood on the first ring. Bringing them to the Ark ensures that no others exist inside the galaxy, and even if any survive, they can't get back. Well, there's no way to know that's true. 2 out of 2 Halos we've found have had these things, and we're well aware by this point that there are more.
Has a maximum effective radius of 25,000 light years. But once the others follow suit...
The shipmaster says this,
A grave marker has you in its sights.
Which is a very clear implication that he is familiar with at least the concept of the guy, pointing to it being something that happens often enough to casually know about. Cortana gambled with the lives of everyone on Earth, everyone involved with the various military actions in this game and the last, to enact a solution that was no better than any that could have come earlier. She is so bad at this! We set the reactor to blow, then do the level backwards just like old times before meeting back up with the Arbiter. Think he has anything to say about all this? Great. Then High Charity blows up. I assume, anyway. We don't actually see the explosion, but take their word for it, it's gone. How did it affect the Ark? What about the Grovermind, who is apparently directly inside it? Or how about that super powerful Covenant AI construct Cortana was worried about last game?
There's something inside the ship, a presence that's fighting back. For a Covenant construct, it's unusually formidable.
Don't worry about it, we still totally need to fire the ring. The 8th mission of Halo 3, Halo, not to be confused with the 2nd mission of Halo, Halo, starts with us getting back in touch with both the Elite Shipmaster and Johnson, letting them know about our plan. Johnson says he'll bring Miranda Key's ship around, which he apparently knows how to fly and can do so with a crew of only himself. The Shipmaster, in contrast, doesn't offer any help. Then we crash. Sorry, what? Yeah, look, the Pelican just goes down. It was fine before, but now it's crashing. I don't know what to say. It's just a thing that happens. Let's move on.
Halo. It's unfinished.
I mean, she said it, not me. So, for the 3rd time, we're at the control room. We fight a bunch of Flood on our way up to the top, then stand around fighting more of them until Bungie says we're allowed to keep playing the game. Johnson shows up and we head inside where something really stupid happens. Unprompted, for no discernible reason, the Master Chief ejects Cortana's little doohickey and gives it to Johnson. Why? What possible circumstance would call for this, after the massive deal being made about how these two are apparently some inseparable force of nature that can bridge the divide of intergalactic space? He just gives her to a co-worker he barely knows? And it's not like he's busy, he and the Arbiter just sit back and stare at the wall. As for why, I mean, isn't it obvious? If the Master Chief was the one walking up to the console, Guilty Spark couldn't kill him in a last-minute attempt to inject some pathos into this story. And yes, this is the reason she's back on the little dongle, so this scene could happen. With Johnson dead, Guilty Spark follows in the game's only boss fight, and we fire the ring on its small setting. Oh god, I forgot about this one. Okay, so earlier, Guilty Spark mentions that firing what he calls a tactical pulse from this ring will be enough to wipe out the local Flood infestation.
A tactical pulse will completely eradicate the local infestation.
A tactical pulse. So, you know, a small-scale offensive directed at one specific location. And these rings could do that the whole time? The entire threat present in the first game has retroactively been declared to never have existed. Twice. The Covenant could never have fired it because they aren't humans, didn't know what the index was, and if we'd been tricked into it, we could have set it to M for Mini and only sacrificed ourselves.
If Halo is a weapon, they'll use it against us and wipe out the entire human race.
What's the matter, big shot? Can't start your own party? I admit, I need your help.
We plied the Oracle with questions, and it has shown us the key.
With it, we shall fulfill our promise.
Activate Halo's defenses and destroy the Flood.
And hey, better point, what happened to...
Halo doesn't kill Flood. It kills their food.
A tactical post will completely eradicate the local infestation.
Nothing from the first game matters anymore. And don't get confused, because the plan here is to fire the ring on the small setting. We do that. After an escape sequence that's just driving for way too long and a ramp into the waiting ship, the ring does indeed fire, and peters out a couple thousand feet above the surface. Bungie! Guys, what are you doing? Oh yeah, and at some point during all this, Guilty Spark confirmed that humanity are the Forerunners.
You are the child of my makers, inheritor of all they left behind. You are Forerunner. But you already knew that. I mean, how couldn't you? Last time you asked me if it were my choice, would I do it? Having had considerable time to ponder your query, my answer has not changed. To have a record of all of our lost time. Human history is it. Why do you continue to fight us, Reclaimer?
I am a monument to all your sins.
A Reclaimer? Here? At last. And this time, none of you will be left empty.
Take the icon in your hands. And do as you are told.
Please use caution. This Reclaimer is delicate.
That secret dies with all the rest. Your forefathers wisely set aside their compassion.
Okay, well, it took 6 years to get here after being incredibly obvious the first time, but fine. Now that all this has been revealed in plain English to a character who's seen all the clues, knows all the implications, how will it change things? That's right, everyone. It doesn't. This reveal is just a thing that happens, and then we move on. And we move on to a cutscene, where something really stupid happens. It's tense. The ring's firing, we're only barely outrunning the blast, a tank almost crushes us, the works. We find a safe spot to ride things out, repeat the last words from the first game, and then... hard cut to a memorial service for all the people who died, including the Master Chief.
Hard to believe he's dead.
What? When did this happen? Look, we get a flashback of the ship coming back to Earth, the Arbiter's there, and the other guy's apparently dead now. Okay, bye. If only, right? After Fake Out, we cut back to around the arc where it's retroactively explained that the portal home closed over the ship and stranded the Master Chief in intergalactic space. You know what I've said about Bungie being bad storytellers? This right here is more of that, possibly the dumbest thing yet. Right up until the very end, they still manage to drag things down even lower. There is no more bottom to this barrel, they have scraped right through. What possible reason was there for leaving this part of things out? Did they forget to animate it? Even in the literal last minutes of the entire trilogy, were they trying to sneak one more bad mystery in? What happened to the Master Chief, they want people to ask, seconds before telling you he's dead, a minute before telling you he isn't. And then the Arbiter and all the elites just leave. No attempt to set up what will happen next with his new piece, no mention of any of the other various aliens, just, sorry for fighting, see you later. It's a story with no resolution. It was all just a series of things that happened. And now it's over. And now that we're at the very end, let's look back to the beginning. On a macro scale, the structure of the whole trilogy is abysmal. We stumble onto a Halo that the Covenant supposedly know is a weapon they could use to wipe us out, but never have, and also seem to have ignored entirely. Sometime later, they randomly find and attack Earth, leave immediately for a second Halo where they don't do anything, go back to Earth, and leave again. At no point during this entire story does it feel like they have a plan or in control of the situation, almost like it was written with the sole intent of each level being a cool-sounding one-sentence synopsis. Playing through Halo's collective narrative feels like being forced to listen to someone explain their dream to you in excruciating detail. There's no structure. Things start to happen for no real reason, then stop after a while. Locations change seemingly at random. People babble jumbles of words that nobody else reacts to, and it all ultimately ends with the entire thing trailing off and the person going, "Yeah, then I guess I woke up. Yeah, then I guess the game ended." I have a conspiracy theory about this game. If you're still here, I assume you want to hear it. Halo 3's marketing campaign was absurd. You might even remember it. A massive diorama, hauling actual war veterans in front of a camera to talk about this game like it actually happened, that sort of thing. It was legitimately one of the most expensive marketing campaigns for a video game ever run. You ever wonder why? Surely Halo 3 didn't need this absurd spread just to remind people the game was coming out. Nobody involved should have had to try that hard to sell this thing. But what if they did? What if Microsoft knew Bungie had handed them an unsalvageable stinker and threw panic levels of money at it to make sure everyone was frothing at the mouth to buy it before any real opinions surfaced? They couldn't afford to let their flagship franchise, the one they had so famously poached from Apple just 7 short years prior, flop. They already suffered through Bungie not delivering all of Halo 1 or 2, and now they had this absolute pile on their hands? Companies writing blank checks for their marketing departments to overhype a disaster isn't particularly rare, and if you ask me, it's exactly what happened here. Bad products need the most help to be sold, and Halo 3 sure got a lot of help. Maybe it should have gotten some earlier. I know it may come as a shock, especially if you've seen all 3 of these videos, but I don't like this series. I'm told that they're the absolute pinnacle of military sci-fi, bombastic and bold, exciting and fast-paced, full of deep and memorable characters inside a meticulously crafted setting that rivals any other. And I've just got to ask where any of that is. These are shallow stories being told off the cuff with no interest in looking back and no time to plan ahead. The plots are messy and muddled and unsatisfyingly constructed, obsessed with dangling a mystery in front of you that they never intend to answer. The characters are cardboard cutouts who have nothing to say for themselves, no discernible personality traits, and nothing in the way of an arc. The villains, when they exist, have bad plans that would fall apart if the script wasn't written to funnel everything directly into their laps. The setting can't rise above being a bad imitation of things Bungie thought was cool but fundamentally do not understand well enough to iterate upon. The gameplay is flat and mechanically weak, assembled by people who feel uncertain of themselves and outright distrustful of the player. They're games and stories for people who don't know that better options exist. They're dishonest products that hope to trick you with flash so they never have to find depth or construct anything real. As far as I'm concerned, Halo 3 represents the absolute most heinous example of cashing in on ill-gained goodwill that I've ever seen from a video game company. The worst thing about this game isn't any individual point, but the fact that Bungie figured the diehards wouldn't care and would, in fact, be blinded by the fact that it was Halo 3 at all. Looking past my own dislike of it, I think fans should have been insulted by this game. It's so clearly stretching out the dregs of what remained from 2 with no attempt to offer anything beyond it. It's the shortest game of the 3, but still manages to waste half its runtime doing nothing. It refuses to even acknowledge, let alone conclude, the story of a major character and callously discards its supporting cast for shock value that doesn't lead to anything. Aspects of the setting introduced here aren't given any attention, and what came before isn't even mentioned. The entire package feels like Bungie fulfilling an obligation, not making something they wanted to or cared about. And yet, it was and is wildly popular. I don't know how, but I know why it didn't work for me. By all accounts, I should be Halo's target audience. The first game came out on PC right before I got into high school. I was a shooter fan, I loved science fiction, and I was no stranger to online deathmatch and capture the flag. But that's exactly why Halo was a miss for me. I already liked and had played plenty of FPS games that did what Halo was doing better. I already read a ton of sci-fi that did what Halo was doing better. And I already played a ton of online multiplayer stuff, so the existence of it wasn't a novelty. It wasn't my only option. I had things to compare it to. I'll remind you all, as well as myself, Halo wasn't targeting people like me. It was targeting people whose only experience with first-person shooters were things like GoldenEye and Turok, if they had any at all. and to the growing audience of console players in this new generation, something that looked and played as slick as Halo was enough, and they didn't really care about the particulars. They had no way of knowing that Bungie was stumbling their way around a genre with a decade of vocabulary and design philosophy already established, missing all of it. They didn't know how to judge level design or weapon balance or enemy variety because they hadn't spent the entire 90s learning how. It's not their fault, it was all new to them, and therefore it was all good. But I think something that console players of the era don't understand even now is that outside the Xbox, Halo was not a big deal. The first game found a reasonably sized audience on PC thanks to the custom edition release that opened up modding, but when Microsoft tried selling Windows Vista on the back of the second game, it didn't go well. PC players were not hooked in the same way because it just wasn't as impressive on this side. When it was announced that Halo 3 wouldn't be ported to Windows, the reaction was small and apathetic. The popularity may have even hurt Bungie in the sense that it put way too bright of a spotlight on a company that wasn't equipped for it. At this point in their tenure, they'd gotten used to being the only option on their chosen platforms. Without ever having real competition on the Macintosh or the fledgling Xbox, they'd never had to try to stand out. Whatever they did was going to get attention because they were the only ones doing it, and that meant they never had to learn how to do it better. It's hyperbolic to say that Halo ruined the FPS genre, but it's also kinda correct. As its popularity surged, publishing companies were demanding games like it, so shooters started carving off pieces of their identities to fit themselves into Halo's mold. But to be like Halo was to actively chase mediocrity, which is why none of those Halo killers ever managed it. People recognized the formula was unimpressive, but nobody ever wanted to admit that Halo could have been the problem all along. And so, by the time this third game came out, the genre was basically going one direction. Forward, down a narrow hallway, following a nav marker floating over the next cutscene trigger. Like I did in the first video, I'm going to urge anyone who's still watching and who is a Halo fan, try out some old shooters. Try Doom, Quake, Unreal, Blood, Duke Nukem, Half-Life, and plenty else. Go back and look at what Halo wasn't. See how much had already been figured out, how varied and interesting and vast and experimental the genre was. See how many steps backwards Halo took. How many more were taken when its popularity infected every other game. Which makes the fact that ODST and Reach are both way better really confusing. I'll get to them eventually, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you want to see that, and go ahead and tell YouTube you liked the video so it doesn't feel as much like I'm wasting my time with all this. Maybe buy me lunch on Ko-Fi or get yourself a copy of my own science fiction trilogy, both linked down in the description. And if you're still here, hey, I appreciate it. I wish that critiquing these games wasn't such a weirdly contentious topic, but that's the internet we live in. Remember to be polite in the comments, and take care out there.